You always end up in this faith test about how strong your intention really was at the beginning that you want to do it. And you always hear, I was about to give up. I was in a bar and I put my last $5 down. Then my agent called me.
I have with me today Chip Higgins, who is the founder of Bizzics, author of the Bizzics Way, ex-banking executive for over 35 years, ideas on momentum, inertia, velocity, density, size, and sees leadership as a nucleus. What I like about you, Chip, when I was going through your content is how you focus on how practical moves help small businesses, which is very relatable, I believe, sometimes with people managers who may have side hustles or building something aside for their families, etc. And this was actually really cool when I was reading through your content and studying your background, was you were actually one of the founding members of John C. Maxwell's leadership training. Super impressive stuff. I know when I was a college dropout and I went back to college, we studied a lot of his content. So that really connected with
stuff.
me.
Yeah. I'm a big believer in personal growth affecting outcomes. And, the John Maxwell experience started with, just had a friend take me through the 21 Irrefutable Laws, actually VHS video series, 2000, somewhere around there. And I just loved it. I mean, I just found it so accessible, and that feeling where you get on fire. There's stuff that you're really excited about learning because you know it's going to make you a better person and stronger and with more to add to people. I feel like that's what I've tried to do in my career, and definitely the small business owner in mind, that leadership principles are such a big difference maker for any person, any company, any leader. But it's often a cap on a small business owner's growth. And the sooner you can start diving into these principles and mastering them, the more capacity you have to grow your business into something really significant. I just want to make that comment that we never stop growing. We have to follow our interests and figure out where our growth applies and brings about the most good. That's how I look at it.
Oh, I love that. And if I have it correctly, also, you live in Nashville, Tennessee area, or in that area, correct?
I do. I live in Franklin, which is south of Nashville. It's about 15, 20 miles south of Nashville proper. There's a lot of country music people in Williamson County. So it's not just a stereotype. You see people around all the time, which is kind of fun. But I'm not a musician. But I think the interesting part about the music, there's the star category. You just realize how many amazingly talented musicians there are in the world that have ended up here, and they're part of church music things, and it's just a very rich music environment. Whether you see Reba or Kenny Chesney or not, there's great musicians all over the place in the neighborhood, and it's a beautiful part of Nashville. It's a real strong current in our community.
So let's dive into some questions, if that's fair.
Oh yeah.
And so the first question I had for you, and I was going through this guide, really trying to humanize this, but I want to target your intelligence, your plethora of experience. So let's suppose you're a people manager with a side hustle, small business owner, can relate to this too, I feel. We frame it from that. And in your book, you dig into momentum, density, and the moves that create better outcomes. My question to you is this. In your book, The Bizzics Way, begins with the idea that small businesses can be massive. Could you explain that concept as simply as possible? Because I think simplicity scales sales organizations. There's a lot there. Based on your experience, why this is true, please.
Yes, I say all the time. I had a talk yesterday, and I'm consistent in this. It's one of my favorite parts of the book. It's the old Monty Python, the Holy Grail, meeting up with the Oracle and answering the riddle. How can a small business be massive? And my contention in the book is that, and this is it's actually a physics principle, is that mass has very little to do with size. If you held a bowling ball and a volleyball next to each other, they'd basically be almost the same size, but they're completely different mass. 98% of the mass of any element, any natural element, is held in its nucleus. And it's really about what we're putting at the center, what we're doing, that creates the mass. For a small business owner, and this is something I've struggled with for so long, it's a relative term of small, and I don't really view any person bringing entrepreneurship and a desire to help people as small in any way. I want to get that off the table. But if you talk about a small business and how they can be massive, it has a lot to do with experience. Who is the person at the center of the business? If you took a business and said, well, how would I find the very epicenter of the business? It's going to be a person that's there. that person it has a lot to do with your experience, your character, values that you have, but most importantly, the intention of what you're trying to do is what makes you massive. It's a promise to people that you're going to make things different for them in a very tangible way. You get into things like a value proposition, and even if you're in a side hustle, there are things that you can figure out that there's a certain group of people that what I'm doing could be markedly different than what they're experiencing right now on a micro scale. You can deal with the scalability at a later point, but what you're really trying to figure out is this experience decidedly different than what they're getting right now? And if it is, number one, there's a scalability that there's going to be other people out there like that. So you can grow in that respect. But it also gives you, pricing power and clout in the market as you find the way to make the right offer to that audience. We're not talking about multiplication here. It's, geometric growth of finding the formula and the value proposition and ramping it up into a multi-million dollar business. That's where the density starts. It's with your intention and your expertise and knowledge, your character as a person, but the intention to serve a group of people and make their lives different. And that I don't know. Sometimes we lose that in big companies. I think even as a manager with a side hustle, if you think about the people that you lead and how you want your team to be amazing, I mean, what is different about you as a leader that makes them want to come to work and give you all their discretionary effort to make the team the most productive, the most well regarded in the organization? It applies to everything in life. It's a differentiation. That's how I pick it apart. The people that you put around you are also a big part of the proton pack in that nucleus of can you recruit really amazing people to the mission with you is a big part of it. And I think that has a lot to do with leadership ability too. Just people don't follow weak leaders on their own anyway.
I train a lot on the importance of value proposition because customers will buy. So I understand it from that lens. I think intention's one of those things that's really hard to train. Could you give me an example, if I may challenge you a little, Chip, on a time where intention and a good value proposition align well in an example? You don't have to name the company. I want to keep people's secrecy, NDA, all that. But is there anything that comes to mind around that? Man, this people get it, and this is why, that we can kind
I
of see
think,
if we can peel
yeah.
that
I mean,
onion.
I think you look at the bellwether brands in global commerce. You don't. I mean, it's public information. I mean, I wouldn't have to talk about a small business doing this, but you think about in my book, I talk a lot about Sarah Blakely at Spanx, and that was literally a living room floor, dining room floor enterprise of figuring things out, of cutting up pantyhose and figuring out all women want to feel great. I don't mean this in a sexist way, but the idea that people want to look good and feel good about themselves, and to tap into an ideal, I could be the person that could create a product that would make people feel great wherever they go. So that's the intention. Like I have this intention to help other people. And then this value proposition that, when you get down to it, it was not NASA type engineering. It was tinkering, tinkering, prototype, boom, traps the buyer at Neiman Marcus, or I can't remember the store she was with, but traps her in the bathroom and says, let me show you. And
Mm.
I mean, here we are. It's like a global multi-billion-dollar enterprise. I mean, that's it. People that are, they've got a side gig. I think Sarah had quit her job at the time she started Spanx, but is it impossible to tinker around with something with a huge intention like that? And you could say the same thing about Apple and the iPod. I say in the book, and I kind of beat myself up over this. I keep one here just to remind myself. Like I made the worst decision buying the Dell DJ. Dell came out with a digital music product, and it was horrible. I thought I was going to be a hero in my family, and everybody hated it. And then my wife, she's a big Apple person. She's like, I give up. I'm going to get the iPod. And I mean, what an amazing innovation. It completely changed everything for people. The idea and the intention are within every person that you can
Mm.
make a difference like that. I mean, there's something in your life that you know and you care deeply about. If you stopped and thought about how much better you're going to make it for people and drove yourself to it, you would have the idea. I mean, you could make it come to fruition. And that's really, to me, you think about that idea of density and a value proposition and how monolithic corporations are they've made acquisitions and they've gotten big, and the acquisitions they've made one time, there's a lot of passion in that business before they acquired it. And there's a need there that that business was supposed to meet. That's how we start blowing up markets and end up with 40 different beverage choices in the grocery store. Expert knowledge. And it's the expert knowledge of the consumer that this is new and different and they'll really like it. And you can think about it in many, many different industries. That's the great part of being a small business owner, is having the agility and nimbleness to attack these sleepy markets and companies and come up with something that you don't need to be $1 billion company. I bet if you found 10 million of a $10 billion niche, you'd be really happy with good margins for something that was highly differentiated. I mean, that's the way I look at it.
In your book, you use principles around physics, energy, velocity, and momentum to guide small business success. Chip, what inspired you to connect these scientific ideas more to business, and how the concept of momentum might apply to entrepreneurs, if we can extract
That's
some
a great
good
that's a great
intelligence?
story, Paul. I mean, I may I may go on longer than you like, but
It's okay. Please do.
it really started. I was not a great science student in high school. I made it, and I think that I left with a very decent conceptual knowledge. I was not the guy that wanted to be at the blackboard. I was
Right.
not good with the formulas, but I kind of got it. Well, so it was probably the mid '90s, and I was in banking at the time. I was a direct commercial relationship manager, and I had a client south of here, even in Mount Pleasant, Tennessee. He owned a short line railroad called the Tennessee Southern, and he had a nice little connection. He had a route down to the river down near Florence, Alabama. So, he got a lot of river freight coming across his line. But he had, it's a very constrained business on rail. Like if you're a short line, like you're captive to whoever decides to put a plant, on your line.
Hmm.
And so he had this big dream of he it would be Shangri-La for him if he could get a unit coal train to run across his track. And we're in the TV, Tennessee Valley, coals everywhere. And he would like come up with all kinds of plans about how he could tap into a TVA coal freight. And so we were talking one day. I was down there, I think, for an annual renewal or something like that, and safety came up. We were talking about how dangerous trains are, and like safety's like number one. And we started talking
Right.
about the coal train, and he shared the statistic with me that um, a unit coal train is about 100 to 120 cars of coal that weighs anywhere from 12,000 to 15,000 tons.
Oh,
And
okay. Interesting.
you get your calculator out. I mean, that's like 30 million pounds.
I wasn't
And
that good at
the
math.
the momentum formula, it's an easy one to remember from high school. It's like mass times velocity. And I'm like, man, 30 million tons. Like, I mean, pounds. I mean, that's a lot. And they do that rail car. It's not high speed. I mean, it's rolling at 25 miles an hour or something like that. But he told me that train would take 2 miles to stop
Oh,
because of the momentum in it. That's how that formula works. And so it took me back. I was like, good Lord, it's a mile long. It takes 2 miles to stop like that. I mean, that's just like the image of all images for momentum. Like I can't think of anything better than that. And it took me back to my high school class and this, nun that I had that taught me that I was terrified of. But I just started thinking about momentum, and it's like from that moment, it's like the red car syndrome or whatever, it's like I kept hearing people talk about momentum, in business, like, momentum would come up here and there and, be a big rallying, big, jack you up to hit the goals. We need the momentum. And it's just weird. It was like a visceral thing that it just bothered me. Like people kept saying this and I kept thinking, is it a real thing? I don't know if it's a real thing or not. If it were a real thing, it would be a pretty amazing business framework to wrap everything around because it's so clean and, it's simple, but not simplistic. I think it takes a lot of work to get there, but if momentum was a real thing in business, it would be the framework I would follow because,
hmm.
just think about the stock market. I mean, people, stock prices are highly dependent on future earnings growth, earnings momentum. I mean, it's all closely related. So anyway, I probably stewed on it for 15 or 20 years. Honestly, I mean, it just kept coming up. And finally, I'd been through John Maxwell. I had the idea for my coaching business. I was just like, I need to validate this, and I don't have the skills. I can't go into this blind and know what I'm talking about. It's in the book. I called up this friend who's a real physicist, Caltech physicist, and we had a very long conversation about momentum. And he's very skeptical. He lives in the physical world. I don't blame him. He's trying to understand business, but as he kept talking, the whole picture just completely crystallized for me that it really is a universal principle. So much of what he talked about, even the density, the mass thing that we talked about, Marcus never would have picked up on what's at the center of a business. He's not a business person, but there is a center.
Right.
There, I think we would agree that there are things that are at the very heart of a business. You can make a very quick analogy to density and mass and that type of thing. That's where that's how it all evolved. Every day that goes by, I'm a bigger believer in it. I see it all the time. I see the principles at play all the time, and especially for small business owners. I think they underestimate the density that they could have, the mass that they could have, and are not aware really of the energy requirements to keep it going. I think I say this almost every time I talk about my book. I just feel like most businesses run out of energy before they run out of money, and there's this plateau factor with a business that they've gone about as far as the owner's energy can take them. And you start getting into things. Well, how do I manage energy? How do I stay in a high vibrational field about this problem that I'm trying to solve? Number one, and number two, how do I activate a grid that affects everybody with this? What is the culture, and what is my communication of the mission that I'm on trying to accomplish, that everybody gets it, and we don't have a break where the energy just leaks out and we can't even start the engine up. It's such a critical thing before you ever get into all the pro formas, the financial analysis. I mean, all that, like checking that energy level is the primary thing before you ever get moving. And I think that it's an honest internal gut check that we have to make about what we're trying to do. I talk about Michael Gerber's book, The E-Myth Revisited, in my book. It's one of my favorite, probably my favorite business book for small business owners. And he's very clear in there about this entrepreneurial seizure where people jump out into a business because they're mad or angry or unhappy with their workplace or their boss or whatever. It's not enough to sustain a business. Go find a better boss, but don't put your family and your savings and everything on the line because you feel like you've been mistreated or you're mad or disappointed. It's got to be a very strong connection with the future state that you feel incredibly inspired by being the person to solve it. It doesn't have to be a global brand. I mean, it could be a local restaurant, but make sure it's different. Make sure there's something lacking that people really need. Is it a family place? You got a bunch of fine dining and they need family, and you're going to do family better than anybody within a 20-mile radius. It's a challenge, to ask a small business owner where they're going. It's fundamental to momentum that you have a velocity as a vector, and it requires speed, distance, and direction. A lot of feel and intuitive type behaviors in the small business arena that it feels like a calling. It feels like I need to do this or do that. But have you really quantified it to the precision of a formula that I know I want 10% of single family households to buy from me 3 times a year, and I want to be there within 2 years? To be that very specific, and you might call that manifestation or whatever by today's standards, that you're that specific that you have a vision of it, but that's what it requires, or else the energy goes around in circles. You end up very tired and you haven't gone anywhere. Baked in that is a lot of knowledge about your target customer and how this is going to help them. Obviously, I'm a 100% believer that this is a universal law that affects everything. And you could probably think about your personal life, Paul, things that you've wanted to do, and the same things have to be there. There's an energy toward it. There's a specific goal over a certain time period, and that you tend to rise to the level of your experience and your density as a human being of what you're able to accomplish. It's the same thing in business. You start building out competencies and things to scale the business, but it has to be that kernel at the beginning that has that.
I find it fascinating. You talk about intention and energy, Chip. I am guilty of not defining. I'm totally guilty of that. I've made that mistake 100%.
Mhm.
I was expecting, since your background in finance, I find it fascinating because I think a lot of my assumptions, if I can be candid with you, was we're going to talk about numbers. We're going to talk about what it takes numbers wise. And I'm curious, since you brought it up, about how in the book E Myth, people lose their energy before they lose their business, if I interpreted that message correctly. And sometimes I have to say things out loud because that's how I learn. I have not a learning disability, but I sometimes have to read something a couple times kind of person. I don't get it right away. What are some key things you see entrepreneurs, people who want to go into small business? You said earlier they start from a place of pain, but then it fizzles out. What are some things you see that if they just tweak this a little bit, they can get some of that energy back or not lose momentum?
I got a couple of things on that. I think that it's important to understand that business is dynamic, and while you're moving toward a goal, there's a lot of things that are moving around you. And I think sometimes in the effort to get launched, you can get monolithic about how you're going to help the best. And what I encourage in the book is continuous planning, idea identification, vetting out things that seem different from the original plan, having the flexibility and having that, there's a chapter in there about inertia, about never being stuck to one thing, to be adaptable to how the market is emerging, that maintains your excitement, that if you can be excited about changing to the need that you identified with your intention, that will give you enough energy. There's something about the creative spirit of an entrepreneur that should resonate with if you're really entrepreneurial, and that's who you're trying to take care of. That would be the first thing. I'm glad you brought up the part about finance, because it is a big part of who I am. I feel like I digest numbers very well. I'm a columns and rows kind of person. You're always looking for where things are changing and that type of thing. The chapter on velocity brings something out that's really important, in that you have direction, distance, and speed, but the evolution of a business has to start with like a market share number. There's a certain number of people that you want to satisfy with your offering, but you also have to satisfy a client satisfaction variable to make sure that you're not constantly spending money acquiring new customers. You want
Right.
them to stay for whatever the life cycle is of that client. So you have to do that. And then there's this realization that the well isn't bottomless. There's only so much you can afford. There's a profitability vector too, going from starting to scaling into higher levels of profitability and trying to be consistent or exceed what the industry standards are, so that your business has a distinct value, to an investor or in a sale. I bring that up to say sometimes the entrepreneur can be fooled into a simplistic mindset of customers. But the reality is you're in a three-dimensional cube that you're constantly trying to solve for three things at one time. I don't ignore the profit part. I'm pretty upfront in the book that that's the reason you're in business. There's got to be an economic equation that makes sense. Your investment worthwhile and you're getting a return, a financial return on it. Hopefully you're getting a personal reward from the work that you're doing. But you have to make money to be able to serve more people in your target audience. I'm not talking about your take home pay. I mean, you want to get paid, but if you have a big intention to serve a lot of people, you need profit retained in the business to continue to grow and serve more people. And we can't lose sight of that. I mean, it's all missional when you get down to it. Is the financial metrics part of it is ultimately about how you're able to serve that community of people that you intended in the beginning to serve. In rapidly changing industries, you need it for R&D or testing of things that you're trying to align to the future state before it's too late. You need
Yeah.
profit for that. I mean, there's got to be profit in there. We talk a lot in that chapter about margins and liquidity and just how all that works in the friction chapters. Don't think about profit as personal income. I guess it's more about the mission, and you've got to have it. And the stronger your value proposition, the better margins you're going to have. I mean, that's just a reality. But once people smell profit, they're coming for you. There will be people coming for that profit stream. And you got to be out ahead of the game and about where you're headed and surprise some people about your next move. That's a great question you raised. I didn't want to dodge it about finances not being important. I've just come to the realization that profit is the result of great thinking and great intention. And it's not the front end of the business. It's what it's producing. The genius that you've had toward this problem shows up in the profit. You got to make sure there's enough in there that you're going to make money to survive and grow and thrive in your mission.
I've realized, or what I've and I think we can connect on this, is that so many people will, there's a difference between getting in business to be in business and getting in business to make money.
Right. Right.
My wife was challenging me at the dinner table last night because she said, I've been doing podcasting for about 2 years, and now we're starting to hit somewhat of critical mass. We have a long way to go. And this podcast does not make money. I know that. I'm starting to realize I think I need to think about profit with this. I did it from a place of pain, just being real.
Right. No, that's I mean, that's the case for most people. We can't predict how long things take in business. It's not a cookie cutter like plants or animals or whatever. The gestation period is different for every single thing we do. And you always end up in this faith test about how strong your intention really was at the beginning that you want to do it. And you always hear, I was about to give up. I was in a bar and I put my last $5 down. Then my agent called me, and all of a sudden some multi-million-dollar actor or whatever is making money. I think it's very true in business, is like the resolution to bring something that is different and really important to you, to have the emotional and energy staying power to stick with it. And I'm really happy for you that you're at that cookie stick point. All the investment and having a track record and all of it is leverageable into something much bigger. So hang in there. I mean, I'm in
I
your corner,
appreciate
Paul.
that.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm trying. I never thought about money when I started this podcast. I thought about just helping one people manager who does care about learning and growth so they could have more rapport and lower turnover. That's my avatar for this podcast. I don't want everybody. I don't want toxic people to follow this. They're not going to listen to this stuff anyways. Go do something else. But let me go. I want to scratch more of your background. In your book, one of the things is we talk about is the Bizzics Way. And I think I want people to really embrace and define what that means more. So, for example, you emphasize clarity and communication throughout the Bizzics Way. How can small business owners bring clarity to their teams? And why is this so vital in building a healthy workplace culture? And because I think in sales, one of the things I've learned is even if we have to say something a different way for us to get it, that's okay. I was wondering if we could speak to that a little bit, because I think workplace culture and how the Bizzics Way can really improve it. Let's scratch that.
I love that question, Paul. I mean, it's really near and dear to my heart. I think the first step is being aware of how much your words and your overall communication. We know words are 7% of your communication. Your body language, your tone, your attitude, how much that affects the energy level of your team. I mean, we just started in that energy chapter alone. The clarity of communications, your belief in that communication, your constant awareness of like how all of that communication is going to hit people. It's fundamental to the energy that any team, any organization is going to need to survive. I mean, that's number one. There's another big principle that goes to the heart of density, which John Maxwell has this book, Everyone Communicates, Few Connect, which I love. I really believe in it. There's a second principle in density beyond the core of who you are. It's how you connect. Pencil, lead, and diamonds are basically the same matter. One is really soft and one is really hard. And it has everything to do with the bonds. The bonding that takes place there is entirely different. So it makes different matter. And all these communications, what you're communicating at all times opens the door for something that's not informational, but connectional. And so you are literally pulling a team of people together very tightly around a mission and a vision that you're trying to accomplish, even inside a large company. There's something that you've been tasked with doing that if everybody's together on it, just interpersonally, everybody is connected. But most importantly, that they're connected to the overall vision and the values that are driving the organization and why this job that you're doing makes sense. If they're totally connected to that, you really become unstoppable. We can't really take shortcuts. I've known people that their shortcut is knowing that they're a little off-putting in their style naturally and have used AI to make it more friendly. I've seen people redo emails using AI. I want this to be much more relational and connectional, and this is the message I want to get across. Quite frankly, I don't really have a problem with that because of the end result. There's some self-awareness there that's driving this need to be connected to each other and to be completely bought in. I just view communication is really the lifeblood of a culture, of leadership development. That on the book, I have a chapter. It's on inertia, but I talk about it's all about leadership. And just to make it really simple, there's three things that you've got to have: inspiration, motivation, and empowerment. If you can do those three things, you're really going to have a way to move forward and be agile and have everybody involved. And if you think about it, I mean, they all include constant communication. To empower people to make a decision, they have to be communicated with so frequently to understand the context that they're making a decision in, of the values of the company, the profit goals, the standards that the company has, that they're fully equipped for that. And they can't get it by osmosis. I mean, there's got to be ways that they learn it. And I love the idea that it doesn't all have to be verbal. There are things that we do together that is experiential in bringing the point home about how we have to be with each other and for the company. And that can be really fun. I mean, there are
Right.
ways to make communications really fun and meaningful and lasting with people without feeling like the speechwriter for JFK or somebody. If you get it and can communicate it in multiple ways, you're gonna win the communication game in the end. People have different styles. So you really hit something very, very central to me, I think, through John Maxwell, and just being in good cultures and cultures that struggle and really like superb cultures. You just realize you really can't communicate what you're about enough. This is how this value of our company was demonstrated by Chip or Paul, is a lesson, constant mythology of the company that you're sharing, like a elder. It's just a
Yeah.
tribal elder. Like, it's the mythology that develops around it that people really buy into. So it's a very important point in the book.
I am curious, since you had brought up AI, your perspective around it from somebody who had 35 years in finances and a founder member in the John C. Maxwell leadership training. I'm very curious, since it's relevant and it's almost everywhere. And even institutions now are even making it part of a way to cite papers, APA style, if you use it, because it's just going faster than we expect. I'm curious of your perspectives around it, because you mentioned shortcuts. Maybe we can talk about the pros of it, the cons of it. You've seen a lot of business development mistakes. What is your perspective around AI in today's age? Say if you had it 30 years ago, if maybe we can frame it from that way, however
Well,
you'd
first
like
of
to
all,
approach it.
I do want to say this in a somewhat braggadocious way, is that
Oh,
I literally remember getting my first email account in like 1996
okay.
at work. So that's how far back I go. I remember the dial-up modem.
Oh yeah, AOL.
Yeah,
What
but
that noise was, yeah.
all that being said, technology is a reality that we have to adapt to, and I think every technology has a downside. I think about AI, and I don't like not knowing the truth. I don't
Mm,
like avatars. I don't like the idea that a fake version of me could be present in a meeting, or that I can be faked by somebody and ruin my life.
mm,
I don't like that part of it at all. But at the same time, if you look at AI right now, it's almost electricity coming on the scene, or it's completely transformational in the possibilities for good uses. You just got to be really smart about, um, how do I leverage up intelligence for the good? It's not always about job cutting. I'm sure it will have that effect as it continues to develop. But I think that in the end, people can be drawn to a higher purpose of figuring things out through AI by asking the right questions. And finding the answers has become easier, but you are expressing your experience and wisdom in a question to a global knowledge base that could produce amazing outcomes for people if you ask the question the right way. And I look at banking. There's a lot of rote compliance things that are done in banking by humans that
mm,
have wide margins of error that could easily be cinched up to say we have a safer banking system now because we've applied AI tools that do it the same way every single time, and never take no for an answer in certain areas, like where you can't move forward without it. That's a really positive outcome. I think in our personal lives, I was in a meeting with a bunch of small business owners several months ago, and there's one person that was head of the pack on AI, and he shared a story about his wife went out of town, and he got curious. He was in, I think it was Chat GPT or one of them, but all of a sudden I got to do a week of meal planning and fulfillment for 4 kids. And
mm,
literally went into AI and said, I'm on my own for a week. I got 4 kids. Here are their ages. Here are some of their preference is, will you take me through Costco and give me menus and food? And it did it. I mean, it just literally told him item by item what he was going to need to fulfill a menu. And I mean, I just think about what a relief that must have been to that guy. There was an assistant there. Selfishly, I've adopted it. I think about the difficulties scaling knowledge responsibly for small business owners. And it's been bothersome to me that so many small business owners are left to kind of self-discovery on the internet, looking for ideas. And then one of the reasons I wrote my book is I feel like this is a really solid model to follow momentum. It's going to be developed in a way that I can feel comfortable that this is reliable information. People will pick it up.
Yeah.
But there's also a guidance issue and just this big hurdle of people trying to find coaching and trying to find a thinking partner and somebody to talk to about the specifics of what they're working on. Where do you find that person? About a month ago, I launched something called Bizzics on Demand, which is a AI assisted. It's a closed system agent that has my book.
Okay.
This intelligence has ingested my book. It's fully conversant in my book. I've also written a lot of blogs and articles and things in there. But that agent now, 24/7, I've got a discounted price for like $15 a month. You can get in there and talk about almost any concept that's in the book that you're trying to develop, and you can have an hour-long conversation and get expert knowledge. I view that as really positive. The number of businesses out there that would like to have that kind of companionship, and I'm not saying I'm a Michael Gerber expert in the field, but I think my stuff is solid. And I've used AI to create a platform that had people go in for building SMART goals for their team, for adding on to their sales team, sales culture, annual offsite planning for strategic planning. And they're getting the content out in the full framework and spirit of the book, but also with all kinds of tools that the AI is doing it. Here's a spreadsheet that you can use for accountability in a meeting. I mean, here's some tips for running a meeting. It's like, doesn't that just seem so incredibly powerful, Paul?
I think it's crazy to hear. Personally.
So that's a common good, and it's scary. It's like, it's all the risk and reward. Like, where are you going to engage? And I hope more people start to engage in things like that, because just like with books, I think about what would I give to talk to Michael Gerber or Michael Porter.
Yeah.
If you can take the content and create a conversational AI tool that will take questions from you and maybe go deeper and explain what's in the book, and it costs a couple of cups of coffee a month to do that, how much change could people affect getting the best book and being able to talk to the author? I mean, I think it's just amazing potential, but everybody's working on it from a different angle. I know that banks are compliance oriented and also somewhat process oriented right now with their data, filling things out accurately and all that.
Yeah.
Every industry is coming at it from a different angle. I see people working with it in research, and man, that's a powerful idea that research can be done through AI instead of people at Harvard or MIT or Stanford or wherever all the smart Caltech, wherever all the smartest people are. It's amazing. And I just think I read this book recently, and this might be a good analogy. It's called This Is Happiness. I'm of Irish descent, and I enjoy reading Irish literature. And so this guy wrote this book, and it's about the final electrification of rural Ireland and the dynamic with people as the power company came through. They'd already had it in Dublin. They'd had it in all these big cities, and they come into this little community with their electrification project, and they're trying to get people to sign up for it. And just for some perspective, this is like 1953.
Oh, wow. Interesting. Okay.
And there was this one guy who would not sign up. And he said, this is not going to produce happiness in my life. What I have now, this is happiness. I mean, that's the motto of the book. At some point, we got to sign up. Are you going to be the guy that continues to ride a horse into town when everybody else is in the Model T? I think that's a decision we have to make. And as a society, I think we've got to enforce responsible use of it. Coming from banking, I mean, the fraud is astronomical. Every direction, there are people trying to figure out how to rip you off. And this is just another thing. I think it's got to be regulated, and we need to be sensible about how we use it. But the potential for it is just really something I can't even wrap my mind around. We've got to get on with it. And there are types of small businesses, I think, that are at higher risk than others. You're watching AI do graphics, and there's always that room for human creativity and understanding that may be more understanding than an AI tool. And
Yeah.
I think what it creates is, going back to the beginning of our conversation, you're person that is, it's your sideline gig, your hustle. You have more available to you through AI today to scale your business than you could even imagine if you tap into it. It's going to allow people with great ideas to go upstream faster because of advisory capacity, research capacity, just even understanding demand for a certain product within a market, that you're more fully informed to make the decision, like, it's time to get a home equity loan, or I'm going to take 50 grand out of my 401k because I know this is going to work. I got all the data. I got my vectors. I got the mass of a great value proposition. I get great energy for it. You could watch something grow from 10,000 a year to a million because you have that available to you. I mean, I think it's great.
I love that. There's a lot of wisdom and insight there and good perspective. You mentioned your AI assistant. You mentioned some key things that you have on your website that can help business owners, small business owners level up. Talk to me about what you have on your
I
website.
want to delineate. I've got a
Sure.
Bizzics.com website, the background on Bizzics, what it's all about, and momentum. And you'll see a lot of trains on there. That's my, going back to the beginning, that's my go-to image. You'll see a lot of trains expressing momentum on there. But it'll have some things about my book, and there are some resources. The resources that are completely aligned to the book they're on the website, but you have to get the book and hit the QR code to get there. And there's about 25 planning tools. It's in the book.
Cool.
It's all part of buying the book, and you can get to that. That website is really strong, and there are things in there like energy check. These 3 parts of the business that you need energy for. You can just ask yourself 5 good questions on each one to figure out where you are, and it'll make some recommendations. So there's business plans, lists of resilience planning and different things like that in there. So I would get the book and get the gateway to that. I mean, I think there are a few in there anyway, but that would be a big plus. There's another website, which is my personal website, chiphiggins.com. And I love speaking about this. I hope my energy's coming through to you, Paul. Like, this is something I care a lot about, and I can't talk enough about it. Education is really important. I enjoy public speaking. I was with a group yesterday. It was about 40 people, 40 or 50 business owners in a room where we can talk about this. I mean, I love that opportunity. There's also a Bizzics assessment on there where you can just go down 10 points about how are you doing on business momentum, and here are the key points. So a lot of background on me and that type of thing. And I love that Chip Higgins website. It's really attractive and brings me out as a person more than the Bizzics idea. I'm in the process of building out a page on my website just for Bizzics On Demand, and it'll probably be bizzics.com/on demand. My book is on Amazon. You can find it a lot of places. I've got the hard copy. I've got audio version. I've got a Kindle version. The Kindle version has seemed to done really well with small business owners. I think there's a lot of people reading on tablets and things now, but any version, you can find the access to the tools. And I look at this as like what a modest investment it is to get a new idea set, to buy a book for $15 or $20, and just have a whole new dynamic presented to you that you can decide where you want to go with it.
I will easily put all that in the show notes. And if there's any tweaks after, or for like 30 days, you want to put something, just message me. That's not a problem. Let's do a big takeaway question. Listeners walk away from this podcast with just one lesson from the Bizzics Way, outside of all the other value you can bring by visiting your website, checking those things out. What would you want it to be? What's one thing? And how can, by applying this principle, this one principle that you can select today, can impact their business tomorrow, next year, and beyond? What's that one big takeaway you want people to walk away with?
I think my biggest takeaway that I would want people to have is the respect for the energy part of their business. There's a part of the book, and in the first chapter, I mentioned this at the end, but it was probably one of the most powerful parts of my interaction with Marcus, my friend who's a physicist. Was we ended up in this, we were talking about vectors and speed, and suddenly we ended up in this conversation about speed and energy. And he told me about the equation for speed, which I'm not smart enough to repeat to you right now, but I'll give you the gist of what we were talking about. Is the fact that speed and energy have a direct relationship, but it's also a squared relationship.
Hmm.
If you want to go twice as fast toward a goal, you need 4 times the energy. And if you want to go 3 times as fast, you need 9 times the energy. And you just keep squaring numbers, and that's the amount of energy that you need. In the end, you've got to have so much energy to move a business forward to fulfill your mission that you've got to be able to find energy in other people. And I think that is one of the biggest mistakes that we make, is an orientation toward employees, providers, strategic relationships that we have, that they're functional, they're assets, they're there to do a job, when the reality is the opportunity cost of not getting them aligned to what you're doing and having their full heart and soul in it with their full energy field, that they see, I'm here in a place that will fulfill a lot of my personal life dream, whether that's my personal fulfillment, my financial future. To get all those energy sources together in one place is ultimately going to be the biggest difference maker for you about how far you go with your mission, because you will run out of gas at some point. If you haven't figured that out, how to get everybody engaged, goes back to the conversation we had about communication, that you are an empathetic person that understands what drives people and knows how to communicate that vision to them in a way that's very material and brings out the very best effort in them. That's my big takeaway. Energy is everything. Sometimes it's a buzzword, and you read about The Energy Bus is a great book about how to stay positive, but I don't think we've really gone deep enough into the energy requirement for a business to fully materialize. That's what I would leave people with, is please don't underestimate that. It's one of the biggest puzzles you'll have to solve for.